talk about the election and where things stand and why we shouldn't necessarily be panicking, but at the same time, staying home would be a very bad idea. This is the Depressed Ginger, and he's one of the smaller pollsters, but he's actually pretty good. So let's hear what he has to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in. We've got a major polling update for the 2026 midterms, and this is great news for Republicans with several polls updating. The overall Real Clear Politics aggregate is now pointing in a much better direction when you look at the overall congressional ballot, and you do have this Pew Research. Now, this is not the Gallup, which is like the gold standard. I remember predicting the election was mainly based off of the Gallup party ID, but this is Pew Research, and they've got Democrats sitting 47%. I wonder if this is like a yearly thing they do. You can see it says Dems +1, Republicans -3. That's based off of where it was maybe back in 2024, because we've got the full history of it. I'm going to go through all of it and interpret it and help people understand how important.
I don't want to downplay that -3. I think with things as narrow as they are, 3% loss is something that we should be looking at trying to remedy. We should be looking at creating more Scott Presslers to get out there and try to reverse this. But at the same time, it's not that bad.
But this is the party ID. You can kind of correlate it to generic ballot. Not exactly, but you can see Dems sitting +4 with the party affiliation. But let's take a look at the actual history in terms of the party affiliation 2018 to 2026. Dems +5 in 2018. That was a midterm year. 2020 Dems, and in 2018, it's a very good year for Democrats. Trump was operating in a similar position he is now in terms of the context of the midterms, with him being 2 years or about 2 years into his term. I do think 2026 is going to go a lot better than 2018 did, even if it does say +5 versus a +4. There's not a big difference there. But you look at 2020, Dems were sitting +6. That was the Trump-Biden election year. What did the
one thing about the polls, I did a lot of poll reading when I was stumping for Morgan Philpott against Jim Matheson. And I learned a lot about polling. The first thing that you got to do when you take a look at a poll is -3 from the Democrats. And that is entirely because they have a tendency to oversample cities. This is not deliberate. I want to be clear about that. I don't, I know pollsters. I have friends that are pollsters. This isn't something that they're doing deliberately. They're not trying to deliberately fudge the numbers. But it happens this way entirely because people in the cities answer their phone and people in rural communities do not. That is something that we need to change. Let's see here. Get out and vote regardless, says Astro. They'll say they'll vote and then they'll stay home all the time, half the time. Yeah, and that is got to be a behavior that our party has got to stop. We have been underperforming every midterm since Trump got elected the first time. And I don't understand how it is. One of two things happens. One, we either assume we've got it in the bag and so we don't have to vote, or two, we assume they're going to cheat anyway, so there's no point. And if 2024 showed us anything, even when they cheat, if we show up, there are so many more of us all total. Now, granted, we're spread out further than they are. Like they're concentrated in a fewer areas, the cities. But if you total us all up, there are far more of us than there are of them. It's just they're in concentrated areas and we're spread farther out. I just don't get the time to I don't get off work in time to vote. That's awful, man. That sucks. This is why I actually support making Election Day a national holiday. Because the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of people in your situation. And those of us that work are also the ones that tend to vote Republican. And the fact that they don't let us off of work for this is pretty terrible. They, of course, will turn around and say, well, yeah, but you've got vote by mail. We probably should be, no, I'm not going to say probably, we should be taking advantage of these gimmicks while they're still around. And I don't foresee a time anytime soon where they won't be. There, so it sucks. I'm going to tangent. But we have to make Jin Takai's choice. That is to stay the road of the samurai and follow the rules, even though the rules no longer benefit us. And our rigid adherence to the rules are getting, literally getting us killed now. And or we can start playing dirty like they do and go the route of the ninja. Sorry, I hope you guys don't mind my Ghost of Tsushima reference there. But I kind of equate this situation. Ballot harvesting is a thing in many states. It's legal in some states. Why aren't we doing it then? And really, if we want something change, if we really want to get rid of mail-in balloting, if we really want to get rid of ballot harvesting, they have to lose by it. And the minute that they lose, sorry, I forgot to turn that back on. The minute that they lose, then they'll be willing to make changes. Astro says, America was founding on fighting dirty after. Yes, that incidentally, though. Oh, shoot. There was a YouTube video. It was a short. Gosh, I wish I remember where I saw it. Where it was the British, it was a British streamer in the time of the Revolutionary War, and he was whining about how the Americans won't just line up and just let themselves be shot like honorable soldiers would. Yeah, we fought dirty. And the truth of the matter is that dirty fighting is fine when your cause is just. And the Democrats believe their cause is just. Now, obviously, it's not, because they're immoral, they're disgusting, and they've created a situation where 60% of us are working our butts off to float the other 40%. But obviously, we want to show restraint at the same time. We don't want to engage in the same sort of terrorism and criminality that they're engaging in. But we should conduct ourselves in a way that God would be on our side, with honor and dignity. But at the same time, if it comes to, using some of these tricks that the Democrats are using at the ballot, they're legal in California. They're legal in Pennsylvania. There's a number of other states where ballot harvesting is legal. So maybe it's time for us to play dirty too. They want me and my family dead. They don't get honorable. Yeah, I agree. But let's try to beat them at the ballot. And then let's try to elect Republicans that will use the law the way that it was intended and protect us from their acts of terrorism and aggression.
Dems won the popular vote by maybe 7 or 8. 2022, you had Dems +2. Republicans ended up winning the congressional vote by 2, so that was a 4-point difference. Again, it's not the congressional vote. This is not a poll for the congressional vote. It is party affiliation, but you can kind of correlate the two.
And that's something that I want to talk about, because I do know that there are people out there that are dooming over the polls right now. We really shouldn't be, because ultimately the popular vote doesn't matter. We got to remember that if it were up to the popular vote, then New York and LA alone would decide every election. But it's not. People are divided up into regions, and the vote is also divided up into regions for that purpose, so that they can be represented according to their needs and not the needs of the two big cities. And when we look at the individual polls, there are 19 seats that are contested right now. Democrats have to win 13. Republicans only need to win 7. And the Democrats are not winning where they need to be.
2024, they had the GOP +1. That was a very good job in terms of correlation to popular vote. Trump won the popular vote by maybe like 1.5, 1.6. And then 2026, you're sitting Dems +4. So it's semi-accurate. You look at the midterm years in 2022, correlating this to congressional ballot, it underestimated Republicans by about 4 because they won the congressional ballot in 2022 by 2.5 points. 2018, it underestimated Democrats. I believe they won the congressional ballot by around 7.5 points. But it's not even just this. You also have another poll that's come out, and it has Trump sitting at a 45% approval rating, and that's Morning Consult. That's not a great pollster for Republicans. J.D. Vance now above water in terms of overall favorability. So J.D. Vance gained 7 points overall since the last time they polled it, probably several months ago. Generic ballot, Republicans sitting down 3, Democrats at 46, Republicans at 40.
Down 3 is perfect. Down 3 is exactly where we want to be. Because again, it's not that the pollsters do it deliberately, it's that people in cities answer their phones and we do not. Which I hope that every Republican within the sound of my voice, which I realize that I don't have a huge audience right now. Someday maybe. But this is a behavior that needs to change. And it's because a lot of us don't trust pollsters because we think that the polls are being rigged. But we don't understand that the behavior that we engage in is what leads to the polls showing this 3% gap. But when you adjust for this, -3, Democrats down, Republicans up by 3. Who's winning? And this is why we shouldn't be dooming over the polls right now. This right here, this is exactly where we need to be. As long as we show up, I think we not only win, but I think we actually pick up as many as 3 seats. Like I said, we need to win 7. They need to win 13, and they are not winning where they need to be.
3, Republicans gaining a point there. You also do have another generic congressional ballot, Dems, Republicans tied.
This is even better. Tied, I'm going to tell you this right now. I've been reading polls long enough. If this is true, if we're at 50-50 or even 51-49, if either of these ballots are accurate, it's going to be a blowout in favor of the Republicans. This is a red wave. When you do the 3-point adjustment, this is a red wave.
At 50, this is the Harris X poll that just came out that a lot of people are talking about because it's such great news for Trump and the administration. And we now have updates. You can see here, the Dems are down to, in terms of the overall Real Clear Politics aggregate, plus 5.2. By the way, have you noticed now they're making more aggregates? It's like these liberals never learn. They did this in 2024, and now I feel like I've seen 4 or 5 more aggregates spawned in, and they'll just take the most ridiculous, brain-dead, liberal biased pollsters, and they'll say, well, the real aggregate.
I want to point something out here. You have these polls, +7, +9, +8, +7. And if you take a look at it's Financial Times, it's Big Data. I don't know Big Data. Quinnipiac is usually a deliberately biased in favor of the Republicans. But the newer polls, the margin is slimmer. As these larger ones drop out, this number should come down to right about 3. And if that happens, we're winning. And if it gets less than that, if those other two polls are, if it gets 50-50 or even 51-49, if the Democrats are even 51-49, it is a red wave. These are not bad numbers. There is no reason for us to be dooming. All we need to do is show up. And all we should do is also use the same gimmicks as voting by mail or ballot harvesting that they've been using. Now, obviously, dead people vote Democrat, and that's a problem. Illegals vote Democrat, that is also a problem. We're not going to be able to overcome all the cheating, but we will be able to overcome enough that we can retain the House and absolutely win the Senate. Blood tide would be funny. Yes, it would be. Because here's the reason this is important. All of the return of woke that we're seeing, how all of a sudden we're just being inundated with woke again. How all these mega corpos, whether it's Makeship or anybody else, or going in and at Sega, terminating deals with conservative people over politics. All of a sudden you've got movies where they're casting Ellen Page as a male warrior. I'm sorry, that's a woman. No amount of plastic surgery is going to change reality. Fighting reality is what causes pain. Okay? I don't want to tangent on that too much, but I'm saying this from a position of love. I don't like seeing people hurt. I don't like seeing people suffering. But when you are contesting with reality, you are making things worse for yourself. Ellen Page is making things harder for herself, and we should not be celebrating that. And yet, here we are. It's back, and it's in our faces again. Why? Because they're looking at these numbers, and they assume these numbers at the bottom here represent reality. In truth, the numbers toward the top. Democrats had a chance. This could have been reality, but then they started nominating wacko communists and jihadis. And understand this. Wacko communists and jihadis, people who have openly called for the end of America and the Western way of life. People who, by the way, Mike Johnson, Speaker Johnson, has said that if they win, he will not seat them. Which is as it should be. We should not, and again, the law is on our side with this stuff. We have the law. It is already illegal for communists and jihadis to be holding positions of power. The only reason that they do is because we have allowed it. But if we win, Speaker Johnson has already committed to not seating these people, which opens up opportunity for us to advance our cause in the House even further. Because if Democrats are nominating people that are in violation of the law and can't win and can't be seated, even if they do, then that's going to make the people of their districts a little bit frustrated, and they're going to want to nominate people that can win. But by that time, their reputation is tarnished, and that gives us the opportunity to have special elections that will allow us to get more Republicans in there.
It's really Dems plus 7.5. These people never learn. I mean, if you used Real Clear Politics in 2024, you had a pretty good chance of accurately predicting the election. Now they want to have like their own safe space where they aggregate the polls that they want to use, and it's all just liberal crap. And they've got like the congressional vote, Democrats +8, +9. And this is really the stuff they say, well, Rasmussen is Republican biased. Well, there's a lot of liberal bias. There's a lot of liberal crap in this as well. You look at Quinnipiac, you look at Big Data Poll, get some of these that fall off of it. Right now it's 5.2. I mean, we see what happened with the New York Times recalculating everything with the redistricting. If Republicans, and it's just an estimate, if Republicans lose the generic ballot by 4.5, they can still keep the House. Understand that. So it's 5.2, 4.5. I mean, that's within a point. Obviously, we're going to get more polls. This is going to change. But in terms of the congressional vote, you can also semi-correlate it to the Senate. A 5-point congressional vote, you're not going to win the Senate. Not with these races. These are tough races, obviously. The Republicans.
Democrats are not taking the Senate. They may pick up one seat, but the polls that I'm showing suggest that the only seat that they are trending to win right now is actually the one in North Carolina. It turns out that nominating an actual Nazi in Maine to run against Susan Collins was probably not a good idea.
53 seats. Worst case scenario, I think they go down to, they're at 51-49. Even if they go down to 50, they still have the Senate because of Vance and the executive. So listen, you look at this Harvard Harris, Dem +2, another one, Dem +3. I guess they have two different Harvard Harris, or maybe there's a different pollster, Harris X. It's like, how many of these Harris polls do they have? But there's look at these, the last 4 polls, and again, you don't want to be looking at it like this because it's like, come on, it's July, what are we doing? But you do have to think about the inflation numbers.
And this is something else that I want to point out. When we're in summertime, usually the Democrats are actually picking up steam, and they usually pick up steam between June and August, and they usually peak in August in the polling, and they start to decline from there. And what we normally see is that where things start to fall around late September is about what we can expect for the election. Again, with that 3-point adjustment. That the Democrats are already starting to decline is not a good sign for them. And like I said, if we get to 3, this is in the bag. We still have to show up, of course. Drew Invictus, good to see you. Good to see you. Hey, thank you. Still good to see you, man. Welcome, and I hope you enjoy the show. And my half leaf tuber. It's the animation part of Leaf's program ran great. Really smooth, really beautiful character here, but I couldn't get the overlays working. And my computer wouldn't even open it, and I don't know what's going on with that. I'm gonna try to keep working on it and trying to fix it. But welcome. It's good to see you.
You see what the inflation data came in at? It was, what was it, 0.4% lower than the expected. That's the biggest underestimation we've seen since the 2020 year, which was obviously, that had a lot to do with the situation involving the pandemic. This was just, they severely overestimated what the inflation was going to be. That's why the market jumped. And the market's been doing well. But the big problem, and they attribute this to inflation, and this is how voters interpret it, they say, well, the gas prices are so high, that means inflation is up. Well, you do look at the price index and things like some of the inflation, it doesn't even calculate energy, and so maybe they do have a point in terms of that. But the overall inflation, and this is the exact thing that I was talking about really before we got sidetracked with this Iran war, and I said the Iran war was not a good idea. And with the Iran war, this is not going to be something that's fun, because it looks like they're trying to prolong this, and then they're going to kick it back up next year after the midterms. They want to get through the midterms. They want to suppress the price of gasoline. And then in early 2027, there's going to be another situation with Iran where the war kicks back up, because they obviously cannot get a very good deal, or the deal that they want. And this is just a mess. I didn't want the Iran war.
I don't think any of us did. I'll be honest with you. I'm still unclear as to why we're doing this. But I do believe that if we're going to do this, we do need to be a little bit more vicious. We need to go in there. We need to blow stuff up. And I'm really confused on that, because we started that way. We knocked out a number of their leaders and then crippled their latest supreme leader, and yet somehow we have not toppled their government. And it just feels like if we were to press just a little bit harder. I don't know, man. I think that I agree with him on this point. This is something that does have the potential to hold us back. With gas at $4 or $5 a gallon, that's crazy, and that's not usually good for the party in power. But I do think that there are still enough people out there that remember that we're in this mess with inflation entirely because of Biden. It's just that for some reason Trump has been focusing on foreign matters rather than domestic, and we still have Bidenflation. But at the end of the day, it is still Bidenflation. Biden is responsible for a lot of the numbers that we're experiencing. Trump could be doing stuff to fix it, and I will grant his critics that. But the idea that Democrats are running on affordability is an absolute joke. This is their mess. Trump just hasn't gotten around to cleaning it up yet.
It is what it is. If they can kind of keep these gas prices down, you enter this stalemate, maybe this never-ending agreement with Iran, even if there is problems. I mean, this is like a meme at this point. I'm so tired of reading this news about the Middle East and the strait is open. Iran says the strait is closed. Trump says the strait is open for all the ships except Iranian ships. The strait is now closed. There's a landmine that's up the Ayatollah's ass. It's like, I'm just sick of hearing about the strait is open again for the 9,000th time. This is so important news. We must.
It did take me by surprise. I was like looking at it and I'm like, hey, did something just break?
You are welcome to the Quan.
Dude, I love that these animations are working. We've got a bunch more that are coming in. The tier 3 is going to be hilarious because the tier 3 Steel Bear gets to shoot me with her yarn cannon. It's going to be great. Thank you so much, Drew. I appreciate the follow.
Must break. I'm just tired of hearing about it. But listen, just get out of the Middle East. My God. No, you can't do that. That's immature of me. That's not how the world works. But it is quite annoying. Either way, this is good numbers for Republicans. I mean, think about a Dem +2. They're going to cope about this. They're not going to put this into their aggregates. Watch. They're going to be like, the Democrats are winning by 7 or 8 points. This is.
Not only are they not going to put it into their aggregates, but they're also going to ignore it completely, and they're going to completely, totally double, triple, quadruple down on all the woke stuff. They've convinced themselves that they're winning. But again, as the closer this number gets, this top number here, the closer that gets to 3, the more we have it in the back. And if we get it below 3, it's a blowout in our favor. So again, no more dooming, guys. These numbers are great. These numbers are absolutely fantastic. I would prefer that we be at Dem +3 so that we could allow for the +3 rule to take effect and subtract that and make the adjustments to the numbers. But they are absolutely 110% not in a position where they should be comfortable. And we, on the other hand, can't be comfortable yet, but the numbers are moving in that direction. We just need to make sure that even if we do get comfortable numbers, we really do need to make sure we're showing up. Oh, pulling data, the natural skew means we're winning. Yes. Yes. The closer that number gets to 3, and especially if it gets below 3, we're winning. But right now, even +5 is not bad when you factor in some of these polls are actually older. Like, there's a number of these polls with the larger numbers that are almost a month old already. And I bet you that when the new numbers come out, it's not gonna be good. I think we're gonna see a lot less +9s and +7s and a lot more +2s and +3s. And if that continues and this number at the top, the aggregate gets 3 or below, they're not winning. And for them to be in decline this early is significant. Normally they don't peak until mid-August. And I think a lot of people know, like I said earlier, I think a lot of people understand that the economy is in the mess that it's in entirely because of Biden and Bidenflation. And we can't take them seriously when they talk about affordability. And I also think that we can take a look at Mamdani and the mess that he's making of New York and how the state has had to bail him out to the tune of $11 billion already. And it's still not enough for all the free stuff that he's offering people. I think people can see that in real time. I think people are also looking around the country and realizing, hey, wait a second. When did all these Muslims get here? You know, I'm an Xavier guy. I really don't like having to think like that. But again, when there are people that are out there that are coming in mass and they're behaving in an aggressive manner, it is unnerving. You know, it'd be nice if the moderate Muslims would talk to the extremists and say, hey guys, can you kind of knock that stuff off? You're rattling people. Of course, since a lot of them aren't here legally, ICE raids would be nice.
People always get their predictions wrong because they look at liberal bias polls. Now, look, I'm not saying Republicans are going to win the House, but I look at all the aggregate, I look at the Dem polls, the Republican polls, and you can kind of formulate, I mean, you look at Real Clear Politics aggregate, 2022, look at how close it was. I mean, it did a very good job. Now, sure, there were problems with 2022 on the individual level with races in the Senate. But in terms of the congressional battle, I mean, because obviously Republicans were supposed to do a lot better. It was going to be a red wave, and it was like a red whimper because liberals got bailed out because of Roe v. Wade. Which in the long run, you think that's a Republican victory, but in the micro picture, it was a problem. But you look back in 2022, it had, the average was, so Republicans actually did win by 2.
They don't have Roe v. Wade this year. It's unusual for Republicans to lead the aggregate. So this was pretty significant, which is why we were expecting Republicans to do better than they did. But he's right. Roe versus Wade did galvanize the left. And so I think that 2020 is sort of an outlier. I think that the Republicans leading the polls at all was weird, leading as much as they did. And it's important to note that we did, in fact, win. Just not as much as we thought. Yeah. So, 2020 was a bit of an outlier. Like I said, the main takeaway there was that Roe v. Wade kind of galvanized the left, and we didn't do as well as we should have. But it is important to note that we did still win, which is, again, why we can't necessarily assume that we're going to win. We have to show up. And I think lower than expected turnout was also something that impacted 2020. So we have to show up. But the polls for this year are actually looking pretty good. They're actually looking really good. And I do think that there's a chance that we can maintain the House, especially if that number slips below 3%.
2.8, I had it at 2.5 earlier, I said. So it was actually 2.8. Morning Consult, their last poll was a Dem +5. That was only 7.5 points wrong. Trafalgar had Republicans +5. It was only 2.5 points off. Wow, Data for Progress actually had Republicans +4. But you go back to 2018. I mean, this is only this is 1.1 points off, and they overestimated Dems slightly. But that's like within the margin. I mean, you look at 2 or 3 points, it's within the margin. So that's why this is so important, because this has been really on the money. And if you can get this down to you want to get this back down to where it was here, get it back down to 4.5, 3.5 even. And maybe it's possible. I mean, if you can do some micro things that help people, and the war with Iran keeps getting prolonged into this stalemate where the price of gas continues to be suppressed, at least until after the midterms, that's probably what they're trying to do. Or they'll just artificially suppress it on a domestic level, which you can do.
I actually don't know if that's an option, because Biden pretty much emptied the strategic oil reserve, and it has not been refilled. In fact, a lot of what we're dealing with right now are messes that Obama and Biden made that were never cleaned up. And ultimately, that is my frustration with Trump, is that I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I don't understand why domestic issues are largely being overlooked in favor of foreign policy. Now, I grant you, I don't know what they know, so I'm not in a position where I can say for sure one way or another where we belong on the world stage. Obviously, there is an argument to be made looking around that not fighting them over there means fighting them here. I think there's some truth to that that's becoming more apparent. But at the same time, I don't think that they've done a good job of justifying the current war in Iran and what the impact on gas prices that it's having. That is something that I do worry about, which is why I'm saying we shouldn't rest our laurels. But at the same time, with these things not being resolved and these things still issues on the minds of the voter, For the Democrats to be doing this bad in light of that is profound.
You have some levers at your disposal to potentially artificially suppress it for several months. But you look at this and you say, well, there's not going to be any rate hikes. Not with those inflation numbers, not with Trump having his guy in as the Fed chairman. At least we wouldn't expect anytime soon.
Sorry, this stuff's my bread and butter, so I think that a Fed rate hike would be very, very bad right now. I think that right now where we're at is probably where we should keep it. We don't want to go all the way back to zero, because at some point that causes inflation. But you don't want to be so aggressive in fighting inflation that you make the cost of housing even more expensive than it is. I've mentioned before, and I will keep saying again, that the way that we address the housing situation is that we have to start with a repeal of Dodd-Frank. Any adjustments in the interest rates right now is not how we fix that. We have to allow for a market correction. And I don't think that Trump wants to have the market correction happen on his watch, because that does mean that the stock market's going to take a hit, and the homeowners are going to be upset that the value of their home is going down. But ultimately, the house is only worth what you can sell it for. And when there's so many people that can't afford to buy a 100 square foot house for $500,000, is the house really worth $500,000? So I don't think that there should be any adjustments to the interest rates. What they can do, however, is try to figure out what we can do to get things with Canada settled down enough to where we can resume building the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline, they started building it under Bush, then Obama stopped it, then Trump started it up again, then Biden stopped it, and again, another mess that Biden made that Trump has yet to fix. We could resume sales we could resume building the XL pipeline, and that could help with prices. Other things that we could do, and I do know that the Trump administration did try, is to open up ANWR again. Shockingly, when this has been another one where Republicans come in, open up ANWR, and then the Democrats will shut it right back down, and then that instability has created a situation where only one oil company was interested in resuming work in ANWR. And there needs to be steps to make it so that once these projects begin, the Democrats can't just shut them down arbitrarily. These solutions would allow for greater domestic production of oil, and the more we can produce here at home, the less we would have to rely on foreign sources of oil. The less we don't actually get a lot of oil ourselves from the areas of the world that would use the Strait of Hormuz, but it is impacting supplies because a lot of the countries that we do rely on are looking at this and they're not sure whether they should produce more or less, and that has kind of created an instability amongst the OPEC companies. That, again, can be remedied by greater domestic production. This is something I think Trump should get on, but again, apparently we're not able to walk and chew gum at the same time. I think there are solutions that should be explored.
But we'll just have to see this. These congressional vote numbers are getting better, and I think you kind of expected it. And you do have to wonder, well, is it a situation where there was always going to be this kind of dead cat bounce for Republicans? I was going to say post-Iran war. Obviously, it's not post the Iran war. There's no actual long-standing agreement, but it's a situation where 2 or 3 months ago, obviously the Iran war was in a much different situation. People were talking about it constantly. Now it's more so on the back burner because of this agreement, this understanding, at least the temporary agreement for 2 months. And my guess is the way Trump works, he's probably just going to extend that or continue extending it until after the midterms end. That's what I would guess on that. Because you did have the administration at a really low water point. I mean, when you get to around 6.5, 7.5, 8 points in terms of a Democrat generic congressional vote lead on Real Clear Politics, this is a big problem. The House is gone at that point. I mean, unless you think all the polls are wrong by 4 points, can we really say that, or are we just coping? Well, we're probably just coping at that point, especially considering the congressional vote in terms of the aggregate overall average has been relatively right the past 2 midterm cycles. It's been about a point off, less than a point in 2022. And so the hope is that this thing's got to come down, and it has come down a little bit, and these polls are a lot better, and you get this +9 off of here, you get the +7 off. Oh, that's just what we need. We need Quinnipiac to update and give us a Dem +10. Make my day and give us a Dem +10. That'll be great. That'll really help us.
He jokes, but Quinnipiac is a notoriously biased poll. I always try to, when I'm looking at the polls, I always try to math my way out of them. The big data poll here, I don't know who they are, actually. I don't know about their reliability, but this +9, yeah, it's already almost a month old. I imagine this is going to be at least half of that. And assuming that this is a poll that does bias in favor of the Democrats. Quinnipiac is a poll that you can overlook. Reuters is a poll that you can overlook. Like I said, though, a lot of these folks, they don't prejudice the polls deliberately. It's just that cities answer their phones and we don't. And that's where you get +2, +3. And if you factor in plus the +3, that's still puts the Democrats ahead at 2 in the aggregate right now. And that does mean they're winning the House, but probably not by much. But I expect that this is going to continue to fall. But leave it to Quinnipiac. I would not put it past them to put out a very, very, very faked poll of +10 to upset this process.
We need an Echelon update. I think Echelon will come up with a Dem +2. We could use a Rasmussen Dem +1 update, maybe. Get the spread down to like 4.5, maybe 4.2. I mean, at this point, it's like, what am I even talking about? It doesn't even matter. Like, it's still 3 months away. But I'm just saying, I mean, the trend we're seeing right now is more positive for Republicans. There's no question about it. And again, you go back to New York Times and their calculations, and they said, listen, with the redistricting, I mean, Republicans have basically created 2 more points to possibly win the House. And what I mean is, prior to the redistricting, remember, there was the redistricting war, and the Democrats were like, we're actually going to win. Trump shouldn't have picked this fight. And we know what happened. Trump just buried him. And I mean, it's like a +12 seat advantage for Republicans with the redistricting. They got shelled off. They tried to remember when they tried to redistrict Virginia and then they got shut out.
Don't forget, the Democrats drew a circle around Salt Lake City and then used the courts to declare that a district. This is going to be a very, very close race. And it's important to remember Governor Cox, a Republican supposedly, has chosen not to do anything about it. Now they're promising they're going to fix it in later sessions. We'll see. But it does give the Democrats 1 seat that they would not otherwise have if they were willing to fight. There were also seats that we could have had if we had been a little bit more willing to fight in Indiana. So it's frustrating because we could have made the floor so high that their taking the House was impossible. And we didn't.
Redistricting Virginia with a rigged question, and then the Supreme Court's like, this is just not allowed. You can't do this, man. Come on. And I know it's kind of like, you got to be annoyed if you're a Democrat. I would be pissed off, honestly, because Republicans can do it, you know. DeSantis can just do it very easily because he controls the entire Supreme Court, and Republicans don't have stipulations into redistricting. There's no actual Democratic vote that's needed to redistrict within the Republican states. So it's a little bit easier. But remember, they tried to make this narrative that, well, it backfired on Trump. The Democrats are going to redistrict. They're actually going to win the redistricting war. But the point I was making was the New York Times said it's gone from a Democrat generic ballot, generic congressional vote if they win by 2, then Republicans can still keep the House. Well, now with the new seats that Republicans have created, the Dems can win by like 4.2, 4.3 points in this congressional vote, and Republicans can still keep the House. Now, don't get me wrong. If you look at the betting, it's an uphill battle. I think the betting is a little bit, and this is just a non.
I do not use betting in my calculations. And I'll tell you why. The betting is not reliable entirely because they're able to change their bets right down to the very last second. And the end result of that is that the betting markets are always right. When in reality, the betting markets are always wildly off until the very last second. And so you can't really be looking at Kalshi and organizations like that and saying, oh, well, the betting market says this is going to happen, therefore this is predictive of the future. The truth of the matter is we won't have an accurate reflection of what the betting market, or whether or not the betting market is correct, until day of, and in some cases day after, because they are allowed to change their bet right up to the very last second. Correct. Renisar, the betting markets wildly fluctuate, and that fluctuation makes it, to me, unreliable. I don't think that we can take a look at Kalshi right now and say, oh, well, based on the betting markets and the fact that they're saying that there's a 70% chance that the Democrats retake the House, I don't think that we can rely on that, because by the time we get to day of, it's very likely that, oh, well, there's a 2% chance that the Democrats retake the House. I don't understand why there's such a fascination with the betting markets, but unless that gets fixed somehow, I don't think it's very predictive of the way where things actually are. I think that the aggregate on Real Clear Pollings is a much better sample, but even that sample can be tainted. Like I showed you, the +9s and the +8s. But I do think that the aggregate does tend to get closer to where the public mood is right now. And I will admit, because of Iran, because of gas prices, there is still a little bit of a lean D, but it's shrinking, and it should be better with the state of the economy. But I think, again, enough people know that we are still trying to clean up the mess that Biden made. And I do think that the crazier the Democrats are getting, people are starting to notice that, and I expect that this trend will continue. And if it gets to 3%, we've won. If it gets below than 3%, and especially if it gets to 50-50, it's a blowout. It's going to be a red wave, which would be awesome. So make sure you vote, because that would be way awesome. And they deserve it. The Democrats, they deserve to lose that bad.
Biased perspective, I think it's actually underselling Republicans right now, probably by about 10%. Now I'm starting to kind of feel that vibe, because you look at all these polls and really, do the Democrats have an 80% chance to win the House? It's not 80%. No, not with these numbers. 70% maybe I could grant you, because I'm a non-biased person. 70%, okay, maybe I can grant you 70% because of Trump being the incumbent. Yes, Trump got crushed in 2018 when he wasn't on the ballot. Yes, the incumbents normally struggle with the midterms. We understand that it's a very simple majority in the House. It's 220. But I'm not seeing this 85% chance to win the House for the Democrats. That really has gotten over. You want to talk about inflation? That's a number that's inflated. See, now I'm making these corny jokes. It's just they're not landing. But either way, guys, the point of it is these numbers, these last 4 numbers, you can go back a little further than that, but +2, +3, +4, +2. You like seeing that. +5, +6, +7, +8, that's a little bit too high for my liking. We got to bring those numbers down a little bit for the Dems. We'll take a +2. We'll take a +1. Can I get a tie? Maybe I can get a tie on one of these. We can really bring it down a little bit more. which would just be great. And then they like take the liberal polls. It's like, what is the Democrat golden standard for polls? Big data polling, Quinnipiac, morning consults, even though it's only a Dem +3.
We call the morning consult the morning compost. I'm actually surprised to see it +3 because it's another one that's notoriously biased. But maybe they're cleaning things up. Maybe there's a what I'm finding interesting though is I don't see Nate Silver's group in this. Nate Silver was another. I don't understand why people thought his polling was so valuable. He was never right, but I don't know. There's names here that I don't recognize, like 28/Harris X. I don't know that one, and I don't know Big Data Poll. But I don't see Nate Silver here, and that's interesting to me. But yeah, morning consult is one you got to be aware of. Harvard Harris, there's like an 80% chance I suffocate in my sleep, but it hasn't happened yet. Yeah, you guys, you know what would be funny is if somebody were to put up on Kalshi, you know, is Iron Tiger's comic book going to come out? Yes or no? And place a bet on that. I bet a lot of people probably would bet against me on that. And that's because I suffer from very severe flighty artist syndrome, and I'm like, shiny.
Some of the really liberal polls just gave up. They're not even on here. Reuters is normally more Democrat. Whereas Fox News is normally, honestly, Fox News is a pretty good pollster. It's not Republican bias. There's a lot of normies that look at like a Fox News poll and they're like, it's biased for Republicans. Fox News is actually really not a biased pollster if you understand what I'm saying. It's really not the way they poll. It's actually a good pollster. But yeah, that's basically it, guys. These are pretty good numbers. We'll have to see what ends up happening. It's still very early. Well, I don't know if it's still very early. I mean, it is midsummer at this point, and you know, Republicans obviously were going to do this where they tried to prop up the economy in a micro picture for the midterms to get people out to vote. And really, the Iran situation is something people talk about. The Epstein stuff, I don't think people really care about the Epstein stuff. It's just not.
Give me a minute, guys.
When Big T came to office, he was having such a good day. He smiled and laughed because the old president gaffed. Now it's time to give his secrets away. Oh, let's release what we know about all the UFOs. And we gave away what we know of JFK. There's just one more secret to go. Doesn't want to touch. Oh, I bet they all end up on that Epstein. I bet they all end up on that Epstein. I bet they all end up on that Epstein list. Oh, list. Well, I think we all know by now what's the real truth. We've been watching both parties decay since we were in our youth. Then just release the list. I bet they all end up on that Epstein. I bet they all end up on that Epstein. I bet they all end up on that Epstein list. Oh, list.
needless to say, I don't think that nobody cares about the Epstein situation. I just think that people don't expect anything more to come from it, unfortunately. Um, Also, what having gone over some of that, I think that that what is clear is all of this focus on by Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey. And I used to be a really big fan of Thomas Massey until two things. One, his attempt to tie Trump to Epstein when the evidence was to the contrary. Uh, Trump was in the Epstein files as much as he was because Epstein was patient zero for Trump derangement syndrome. And I'm absolutely serious. You can look at the documents yourself. Whether or not they were friends in the 80s and 90s, the fact of the matter is that they became very, very bitter enemies the minute Trump got even a slight hint that there was something wrong. Trump turned on him in a flash. He absolutely helped with the investigations into it, and Epstein despised him for it. He took it personal. And yeah, Trump was in those files a lot because Epstein was patient zero for Trump derangement syndrome. And I think Massey knew that. The other thing that Massey was doing is that people need to take a look at who is funding Massey. People need to also look at who is funding Greg Abbott, who has managed to avoid controversy but should be in a lot more trouble because of who is giving him money. I would encourage you guys to look that up, though, on your own time. But I think that does not mean that there's no there in the Epstein files. I think that Bill Gates, there's a potential for there. There's certainly smoke, and I think it should be looked at if there's to see if there was a fire. I think that some of the other names that do come up in the Epstein files, a lot of them have already passed away. So what can you do? You know, Stephen Hawking's, for instance, is gone. So there's that, and I think that people are taking a look at that and realizing, okay, there's definitely some monstrous and terrible things that have happened, but how realistic is it for us to expect any level of justice at this point? That yes, the billionaire out of Qatar, yep, and there's also there's two billionaires out of Pakistan, and I'm not somebody that looks the other way when it comes to the shenanigans that Israel's doing. I'm fully aware and not happy about Israel's influence buying as well. It makes it difficult to trust Ben Shapiro, for instance, because I don't really know that Ben Shapiro's interests are our interests. And so I want to be clear. I'm calling all of them out. I don't want foreign influence in our politics at all. But when we've got billionaires from Qatar and billionaires from Pakistan that own politicians, seemingly, and we've got billionaires from Israel that own the Daily Wire, basically, it makes it hard for us to be able to know who we can trust. Were it up to me, all of that would be banned. You wouldn't, no foreign money in American politics or American media. Excuse me. I want to be clear. I don't mind so much if they're involved in like video game development or movies or whatever. That's fine. But when it comes to having influence in American politics, I don't want foreigners having a say here. And it's not because I hate anybody. I don't. I'm an Xavier guy. I've been very, very clear about that. I want the world that Xavier fought for in the comic books, one where we can come together in spite of our differences and the brotherhood of man prevails. That's not the world we live in now. CCP. Yes, we're actually going to talk about that some today. I've got a Benny video queued up. It's one thing to hope for a world where Christians and Jews and Muslims can all live together in peace and harmony, and versus the reality on the foot that we have, that everybody is fighting for their own personal interests, and perhaps they should. But at the same time, we as Americans need to be much more cognizant of that. The top 10 that are involved with this influence peddling scheme, China is absolutely number one. You've got Saudi Arabia, UAE, up there, Japan. Although we love Japan, Japan's pretty based. What might surprise some people is that Qatar and Pakistan are well above Israel. And I think it's important for us to be cognizant of who is giving our politicians money, so that we can assess whether or not they're trustworthy based on those transactions. On paper, we can coexist. In reality, we can't. And to be honest, again, I really sincerely and deeply believe in Xavier's dream, or Martin Luther King's dream, if you will. Although I do want to be clear, it's Xavier, Magneto, or not Martin Luther King and MLK. There were different leaders that out of the Middle East that inspired Chris Claremont's thinking. But I should actually cover that sometime, because I like talking comic books. The comics are kind of my bag. That's why I'm making one. But the reality of is that you've got very, very different cultures at odds with each other, and you've got some countries like Saudi Arabia that are actually comparatively pretty chill, compared to, say, Pakistan. Saudi Arabia hilariously is complaining about how radical the Muslims of England are compared to their own. And saying that they won't take visitors from England right now because it's gotten so bad. So it's not that it's impossible to coexist. It's just it's hard. It's going to be really hard. We've got to convince a lot of people around the world to put down their pitchforks and torches. And a lot of people who believe that they have picked up the pitchfork and torch in the cause of some divine law or something. The kindness, it's love to coexist, but it seems like everyone wants to mistake the kindness of coexistence with some sort of... Yes, I agree. And I think, I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to take a risk and say this. I think that, if I'm being honest, coexistence goes against the nature of humanity. I think it is natural for us to be at war. I think it's natural for us to divide ourselves into tribes and fight each other for resources. That doesn't mean, I'm not saying that that's the best way for things to be. I'm just saying that I think that that's what the natural state of mankind is to be at war with one another. And when you have a philosophy that disguises itself as a religion, whose entire premise is, we will be in every home and you will convert or die, it does make it impossible to coexist with that culture. But again, Saudi Arabia's chilled out quite a bit over the years, and if the Saudis can do it, then why not hope for a better future? Why not hope that can change? I think the reality is that the Saudis have realized, hey, Americans give us money for our oil. I like money. We can do business. I think that's probably what's actually going on there. But hey, capitalism and the peace through trade that it can bring, I think is ultimately a good thing. Anyway, we're getting pretty close to this video, so let's try to wrap it up.
It's really a non-starter when it comes to influencing the overall vote. I know people are going to say, how dare you? And the Epstein conversation has just gotten ridiculous. I mean, the Democrats controlled everything for 4 years and called it a conspiracy theory. Well, I shouldn't say the Democrats controlled everything, but they at least controlled the executive. And they called it a conspiracy theory for 4 years, and now they want to be all self-righteous about it. I agree. I think Trump handled it terribly. It's a really bad flop by the administration. It's horrible. But I mean, Trump goes through 3.
That's why I wrote the song, by the way. Yeah, he absolutely flubbed that, especially since he ran on promising to release that. And to be fair, I think he's released as much of it as the courts would allow. It really wasn't Trump as much stopping it from coming out as it was 3 Obama-appointed judges. And the Democrats, of course, want you to forget that, but yeah. But I do think that he could have handled it better.
Democratic vetting processes. He's literally the nominee 3 straight times for the Republican Party, and they can't pull up anything that relates Trump to Epstein. Well, isn't that a problem with the Democratic Party? That seems a bit right. And then the Democrats control the executive branch for 4 years and don't talk about Epstein. And the only thing they say is it's a conspiracy theory and it's not true. And now they want to flip it, and they've totally taken control of the narrative. It's unfortunate. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for the video. Make sure you like the video down below. Thank you for watching.